Hi folks, welcome back. This is the third video for my Tau Ghostkeel, and in this one I'll be showing you how I test out the Oilbrushers by Jimenez. It's my first time using them. This one is more of a documentary than a tutorial, so I'll quickly run through what I did with them and show you the results. Okay, let's go. I love working with oil paints, and when I do, I pull out this little box. It's got all of them in there, and I choose the colors that I want to go with. Then I apply them to a piece of cardboard like this, and you can see the carrier oil seeps out into the card, and it lets the paints dry flatter and smoother. Now Jimenez have sent me this small bag, and this is meant to do the job of the two previous steps that I've shown. So let's test them out. Rummaging through the pack, I found this one, Starship Filth. Seems like an obvious one to go with, and let's use some enamel odorless thinner to work with it. It's a dark greasy color, so I figured I could use it on the backpack there. First things first, I decided to give it a shake, just to see if there's any moving parts in there. No, nothing. Cap unscrews, they slide out. You can feel that the paint is quite thick in there. There's a little bit of, not friction's not the right word because there's oil in there, right? But there's a little bit of resistance as you pull it out. Give it a shake, then I tried to see if it would, see if it would spill and come out. I mean, you know, Stinky Linc doing the test runs for us, right? Being as this is oil paint, it should give us a decent working time, so I decided to put in a couple more dots to use this darker color as a little bit of a shadow area. I've used brown in previous steps, so I wanted to accentuate a couple of deeper parts, so I'll go with a darker color there. And again, the color looks a little greasy to me, so I added it to things that might look like slight mechanical. See this dot on the knee there? Then when you're done, it's really easy to put them away. I mean, that's it. Put it in, screw it on, done. Now let's see how they react to odorless enamel thinners and stretch them out. This part was surprisingly familiar for me. I mean, they really do work just like oil paints. I can tell that they're a little bit different, but you can see they're stretching out, and their ability to thin and self-level is perfect. Here I am reworking it around the back of the model here. I put a few dots around. Now I've got a good mix on my brush. It's got the enamel thinner, picks it up, and then I'm able to keep working it around, and I'm using it as a kind of a localized wash there. That's one thing I like to do with these kinds of these advanced paints, is that it's not set in stone. You don't have to be only doing one process at one time. You can, as your paint changes consistency over the time that you're working with it, you can use it for different effects and save yourself a bit of time without having to go back to the original step of, say, adding more paint or more thinner. Just work it out while you're doing it, and then come back and reapply once you have to. You don't have to be a slave to the process. Make the process work for you. Here's an excellent close-up of how this color looks over a glossy white surface, and I like how it looks like accumulated dust and dirt. Literally, it looks like space filth. I mean, the name for this product was very well thought up, and I love how it looks, so I will definitely be using this a great deal on white. Lovely long working time in action here. That's one of the first dots I put on this model before going all the way around it. And coming back to it now, it's still in a very nice workable state. Sorry for the camera jump, but I wanted to show that every now and then I will clean the brush, because now I'm going to cut the Starship filth back. Now look at that. Now I'm doing more of a cleaning process there because I wanted to keep that part of the model a little bit brighter and white on that front facing there. So I was able to do both with this paint. Really good. Now with the brush damp in thinner, the odorless enamel thinner, I've moved ahead, and you can see I'm stippling action around the details to leave a certain amount of effect for dirtiness, and stretching it out so that it doesn't clump. A couple of the places I'm working on here, they're key focal points of the model, so I'll use multiple layers here and test out the translucent effects of the Oilbrusher paints. This is the exact moment when I spun it around in my hands and said, hey, these are really good and easy, let's test out some other colors. Rummaging through the bag, I picked this one. It just says Earth, and Earth on feet. That seems pretty simple. Let's give this a test. The first thing I noticed when putting this on was that I can dot on the paints really easy with the applicator, so I don't always need to use a two brush effect. I could actually just do this, dot it on quickly, and leave it. Like you can see some really small dots there. I was actually able to accentuate and add to the chipping effect with the Oilbrusher applicator. And doing two things at once, three things at once almost, that really helps pay dividends to get your model finished quickly and easily. Here's a super quick close-up. You can see the effect there. It's really, really good. And it was easy. Let's see how the effects on the feet now work with applying some odorless enamel thinner over the top. And I'll try to stretch it out there. I didn't leave any drying time whatsoever. This is straight on. I'm expanding some of the dots, and I'll just leave some of them as is. Now, I remember about this stage of the model that I forgot I was working with oil brushes. To me, it was like working with my old friend oil paints. Once you get past the initial easy application from the oil brusher itself, it's just working with oil paints again, which is fantastic. Super favorite here, red primer. I had to use this on the helmet. By this stage I'm feeling a little bit more cheeky and adventurous, so I thought let's try this as a highlight for the edges. The tone looks ever so slightly lighter than the base color I've used for the helmet here, so I put it around places that I felt would catch the light and to use it for a little bit of color modulation. Here you can see the accuracy of the applicator. Not needing to switch between brushes saved me a lot of time, and I was able to dot the oil paint into very specific places that I wanted to augment. Then again, with the soft brush dipped into odorless enamel thinners, I've spread and done a localized wash and filter effect with the oil paints. And you can see I'm spreading them out here, very light, soft touch, and just move them gently into place. Let's test red. With the surface still damp from the previous step, I wanted to increase the chromatic richness, the richness of color, by applying some straight red over the top and letting it mix with the primer red that was already on the surface. And it looks really cool. Next, let's test out the white oil brusher. First time with this, so I was quite careful and tentative. So I just placed a couple of dots around in places that I'd like to look a little brighter. Small steps just in case I need to recover. I'm really enjoying the start-stop nature of this. It's so easy to pack up and clean up after using oil brushes. A twist of the cap and they're safely away. A different technique to try this time with a dry, flat brush. I'm going to try stippling the paint in without any thinner whatsoever to see how it blends in to a satin finished surface. I quite liked the result. It was very easy. The oil brusher paint remained soft. It wasn't too dry like some paint remains on your palette for too long. It was in a very good, nice workable state, and you can see I got a nice highlight effect here on the thigh, on the Ghostkeel. As well as the upper chest here, which I wanted to be the primary bright focal point for this model. So you can see the size of the dot that I placed in there, and then working it in here, a very nice chromatic improvement. Oil brusher earth. Out of habit, I give these things a shake, but I can't hear anything. I don't believe there's moving parts inside, it's really just paint. And this illustrates the very fast start-stop nature. As soon as I want to do some environmental weathering, I can open up a product called Earth and boom, I'm straight back into it. After my first tentative experiments with this, I decided that I wanted to test how it works for a heavier application. Here you can see instead of just using the point of the brush, I'm using the flat of the brush to lay a much thicker coat on. And instead of pinpoint application, I'm going for a broader application with the idea of doing environmental weathering, dirt effects in mind. Again, with the idea of having a heavier application, I'm using some odorless enamel thinners here and using it to make a generalized broader wash and move it around the lower leg here of the battlesuit. Using the low surface tension properties of the mineral spirits here, the odorless enamel thinner, allows the paint to sink into the crevices very nicely, and it produces quite a pleasing and realistic effect. Working some of the heavier application back over the white armor here on the feet, and you can see that it's slightly translucent. It produced a very cool effect. Here I am going back and reworking some of underneath the details here to help to give it a shadow, and whilst the brush is still a little bit damp, I'm reworking it to help it give it a streak effect, which streaks always just look really cool on something like this. I'm pretty happy even watching the video back now that seeing that I was able to produce a reasonably dense effect on the feet in a couple of steps and in a very short period of time. So for that reason I gave the oil brusher earth color a very big thumbs up. I quite like that one. And lastly, because the feet are such a focal point here, I gave it a very quick stipple just to blend the paint in that little bit more. Looks awesome. Back to using a soft medium brush, this time again with odorless enamel thinner, I'm producing a localized wash to accentuate these details around the knee area and also to add a little bit more shadow effect up under the knee joint. This is to help it contrast against the knee armor, which you can see I'm leaving alone. Nice example of economy of effort here. You can see that I then retouched the knee part on the other side, and I hadn't added any paint there. That was just the mix that was left on my brush. Here's a quick blooper just for my patrons. Look on the right side there, see that big blob of oil brusher paint that fell on the foot? Yeah, that's nasty. So let's show a quick recovery process with this. First things first, I put the cap back on, then I go with the brush that I have been using dry, the flat broad brush, and I dip that into thinner and quickly spread around the, well, it's not offending, is it? It's not the poor paint's fault. I'm the idiot here. So my offending mistake, first thing first, I mix it around and not open slather though. Can you see that I'm hitting the details of places that would still be interesting to use the paint? I like this paint so much that, of course, a good thing we should overuse and kick to death, so let's do that and turn my mess up into a feature. And there we go, I'm accentuating the crack, again with the details there and a bit of a wash over to the side. And already it's starting to look pretty good. In fact, I think that foot turned out better with the heavier application than did the careful application on the other side. Funny how that works, isn't it? Happy accidents for the win. A quick dry off of the brush on the paper towel there, and you can see I'm going back to stippling the remaining paint there, and it's cleaned up quite nicely. In fact, I'll say it again, I do like this foot better than the other one. Looks awesome. Then a light stipple and clean around the edges of the other smaller details. Clean up the white surface there so it leaves plenty of contrast between the crevices. A little bit of a streak pull down with the sharp part of the flat brush. That's a super technique. Look at that. That looked awesome. So easy to do. Apologies for the weird camera angle, but I do it to use the biomechanical efficient sweep of the hand. So I move the model to suit the hand rather than the other way around, if that makes sense.
What are you putting on?
It's called, it's a type of oil paint.
So it's like a brown?
Yeah, this one's called Earth Color.
So it's like an oil paint. It looks like so it doesn't. It's not actually stick paint, so it doesn't go over the white.
Yeah, that's right, sweetie. That's right. It's translucent. Can you see it?
Like transparent.
That's right. You get it. When you grow up, you're going to be an artist too. You can be even better than your dad.
What? Why?
Because I'm going to teach you lots of cool stuff.
And I'm going to do my stuff to make it cooler. To make it cooler.
Yeah, sure.
My stuff.
I hope you guys didn't mind that. I mean, Tabitha, my daughter, came over and she wanted to have a talk about what I was doing. She asked me, do they smell? And, she really gets it. I mean, growing up with this kind of environment and exposure, it just can't be a bad thing. And some of the comments she had were perfect for what we were doing in the video. So I hope you don't mind me sharing there. Now, I mentioned earth in the comments, but I was wrong. This one's actually dark mud. And I'm going through some similar processes here, but layering the darker color over the light one. You can do both. You can layer light over dark, dark over light. It'll just give you different effects. For this one, I wanted to go that way, from kind of an inside out. Lighter colors on the inside, going with darker colors towards the outside. And I think it's producing a pretty nifty effect. Right about this stage, I remember I turned and I looked over to Tomway. She's over on the other side of the big living room that we're in. And I said, I'm getting a good feel for this stuff. I can use this. It's oil paints. It's a little bit different to oil paints as we know it, but they're useful and good. I can work with this. Big win so far. Dark blue, and I'm going to use this for shadows on the back here of the model. I actually learnt this technique directly from Jimenez himself when he did a demo for us in Shizuoka in Japan. Please be very careful with blue. It's a powerful color, and you can see I'm mixing it here again with the odorless enamel thinners and stretching it about on the places that shadow would fall on the model. It's a very cool technique, and I think it helps your model to look and feel artistic. All done. Thank you very much for sticking with me, guys. Now, I've been a long-term fan of oil paints, but I give a big thumbs up to these Oilbrusher things. I mean, they're oil paint, not as we know it, good, fast, and clean. So I really did like them. Now, next up, I might get a chance to do a quick base for this guy, and if you're interested in seeing that, give me a shout, and I'll put that together for you. Thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye.